In July of 1999, one of the most famous men in America took off from a small airport in New Jersey. He had a newly purchased airplane, a Piper Saratoga he had stepped up to from a much simpler Cessna just a few months earlier. About 310 flight hours total. No instrument rating. A leg in a cast from a recent hang gliding accident. And the haze rolling in over the Atlantic that night was already swallowing the horizon, with other pilots flying similar routes reporting no visible horizon over the water. About an hour after takeoff, John F. Kennedy Jr. was dead, along with his wife and her sister, in one of the most preventable crashes in modern aviation history. And here's the part nobody in the industry wants to admit out loud. JFK Jr. wasn't an exception. He's part of a pattern that keeps repeating decade after decade with one common thread. People buying more airplane than they have any real business flying. Let me explain what I mean. There's a phrase pilots have been whispering for over 50 years, the doctor killer. That's the nickname earned by the V-tail Beechcraft Bonanza back in the 60s and 70s. Beautiful airplane. Fast, slick, expensive, and it kept killing its owners, disproportionately doctors, lawyers, and businessmen. Why? Two reasons. The V-tail had real aerodynamic vulnerabilities in certain conditions, including in-flight structural failures that the FAA eventually had to address with an airworthiness directive requiring inspections and reinforcement of the tail. The fix was real, but it didn't change the bigger issue. Who was buying the airplane? Wealthy professionals with a few hundred hours of flight time, climbing into one of the highest performance single-engine airplanes you could buy. They had the money. They didn't have the experience, and the airplane didn't care. That nickname stuck for a reason. And the pattern? It never went away. It just changed airplanes. If you're enjoying this so far, do me a favor. Drop a like and subscribe so I keep making content like this. It helps the channel more than you think. Take John Denver, October 12, 1997. The singer had recently acquired a home-built Rutan Long EZ, a sleek experimental composite airplane with an unusual fuel system. The fuel selector valve had been relocated by the previous builder, placed in a position that required the pilot to twist around behind the seat to reach it. Denver had limited time in the airplane. He took off over Monterey Bay, ran one tank dry, and the NTSB concluded he likely lost control of the aircraft while reaching for that valve, probably pressing the right rudder pedal as he twisted in the seat. He crashed into the ocean, killed on impact. He owned the airplane. He didn't really know the airplane. That's a difference that kills people. Now fast forward to November 7, 2017. Roy Halladay, 8-time MLB All-Star and Hall of Fame pitcher, was flying his Icon A5, a small, sporty amphibious aircraft marketed almost like a jet ski with wings. The NTSB report on his crash is one of the most uncomfortable documents you'll ever read. Halladay was performing steep, aggressive maneuvers at extremely low altitude over the Gulf of Mexico. Steep climbs, bank angles past 50 degrees. Some passes were just feet above the water. Toxicology found a cocktail of drugs in his system, amphetamines at roughly 10 times the therapeutic level, morphine, an antidepressant, and a sleep aid. Comment below. Do you think aircraft manufacturers should be doing more to screen who they sell airplanes to? Here's where this gets really uncomfortable. There's a concept in aviation called the killing zone. It was popularized by a flight instructor named Paul Craig, and it refers to a statistical danger window where pilots are disproportionately likely to die. That zone is roughly 50 to 350 flight hours. Why? Because that's when pilots have just enough experience to feel confident, and not nearly enough to actually be safe. They've stopped being scared. They haven't yet learned what they should still be scared of. JFK Jr. was right in the middle of that zone, and what the NTSB describes in his final minutes is exactly what that zone produces. He lost the horizon. He couldn't tell up from down. The airplane entered what pilots call a graveyard spiral, a descending turn that tightens itself until you hit the ground or the water. By the end, he was descending at over 4,000 feet per minute. He never recovered. Now layer something else on top. Modern general aviation has produced some of the most complex single-engine airplanes in history. The Cirrus SR-22 cruises faster than most light twins from a generation ago, has a glass cockpit that rivals airliners, and comes standard with a whole airframe parachute. It's a serious, fast, capable machine, and it has been sold in massive numbers to private owners, many of them low-time pilots transitioning from much simpler trainers. In the early years after its introduction, the Cirrus had a fatal accident rate that genuinely worried the industry. The airplane wasn't really the problem. The training pipeline behind it was. Cirrus eventually responded by building a structured transition program, and the safety numbers improved dramatically. The parachute system itself, the one that fires a canopy out of the airplane in an emergency, has now been credited with saving hundreds of lives. Over 280 survivors as of late 2025. The technology works. The question was always whether the owner would actually pull the handle in time or fight the airplane to the ground believing they could save it themselves. If this is the kind of aviation content you've been looking for, hit subscribe. Stories told this honestly are hard to find on YouTube. Then there's the Mitsubishi MU-2, a high-performance twin turboprop from the 70s and 80s. Sleek, fast, capable of cruising past 300 knots. And on the accident database, it built up a body count that became impossible to ignore. The MU-2 didn't fly like other turboprops. Its small wings and unusual control system demanded specific, type-aware technique. By 2008, the FAA had seen enough. They issued a special Federal Aviation Regulation, SFR 108, that required every MU-2 pilot to complete a structured, type-specific training program. In the 20 years before that rule, the MU-2 had 80 accidents and 40 fatalities. After it took effect, the fatal accident rate collapsed. Same airplane, different pilots, completely different outcome. You can see the pattern now, right? It's not really that owners are getting dumber in some literal sense. It's that the airplanes have gotten faster, more complex, more capable, and in many cases easier to buy than to actually fly safely. Glass cockpits with menu systems that take dozens of hours to master, turbocharged engines, pressurization, anti-icing systems, single-pilot personal jets like the Cirrus Vision Jet, the Honda Jet, the Embraer Phenom 100, airplanes that decades ago would have required 2 professional pilots up front, now being owner-flown. And the FAA, they issue a license. That license doesn't measure judgment. It doesn't measure ego. It doesn't measure whether the person holding it will recognize that today's weather is too much, today's mission is too risky, today's plan needs to be canceled and rescheduled. That's the real killer. Not stupidity, pressure. Get there-itis, as it's called in the industry. The trip is paid for. The family's waiting. The meeting starts in the morning. The schedule overrides the brain, and every NTSB report I just walked you through has the same handful of phrases buried in it. Continued VFR flight into IMC, maneuvering at low altitude, failure to maintain aircraft control, different decades, different airplanes, same human being making the same mistake. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments and I actually read them. The aircraft keep getting smarter, autopilots that can fly and approach right down to the runway, synthetic vision that paints the terrain on a screen in front of you, traffic alerts, terrain warnings, whole airframe parachutes. None of it matters if the person in the left seat believes they're better than they actually are. The airplane will always be honest with you. The question is whether the owner is being honest with themselves. If this video opened your eyes a little, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Fly safe out there, and keep your ego on the ground.